Thank you all for joining us today for the University of Chicago's day number 2 of Vet Week, which is honoring the hurt. My name is TERRELL. I'm the Associate Director in the Office for Military Affiliated Communities at the University of Chicago, which is located in the Office of the Provost's Equal Opportunity Programs. You can call us OMAC for short. We serve as the central hub of resources, support, and programming at the University of Chicago for veterans, service members, and their families. Today, I'm honored to introduce the university's second day, again, of our Vet Week, honoring the hurt. As a former medical professional in the military who has had the privilege of providing care to our wounded warriors in the field and in hospital settings, I'm honored to participate in the continuity of care once they return home. I'm humbled by the remarks made yesterday by our female veterans during our Women in Boots session. But I must note, it's not simply me. It's a team of spectacular individuals in equal opportunity programs and OMAC that makes these initiatives great. Just as there's a community of networks supporting our veterans who live with service-connected injuries and ensuring that they have the proper access to education, resources, and programming. There's no single person or entity that does it all. And I'll say here today that I'm wearing one of our partner shirt, which I'm pretty sure John, one of our panelists, will speak a little bit about later, which is the Russia's Road Home program. The Marine Corps may think otherwise, that they can do it all by themselves, but I'll say happy birthday, 245th birthday to them today as well anyway. I'd like to introduce our MC for today's event, Alexandra Brown. Alexandra, who shared her experiences in yesterday's event, Women in Boots, is a U.S. Air Force veteran, a second year at the Graham School, and founder of the new student group at Graham, the Graham Brigade. She's also director for operations at SVA Illinois and a peer advisor for the University of Chicago's PAVE program. Please join me in welcoming Alexandra Brown.
Thank you, TERRELL. Welcome, everyone, and thank you for attending. I want to start by thanking members of the Equal Opportunity Programs Office for Military Affiliated Communities. Over the past 2 years, I have witnessed firsthand the work that OMAC has put into supporting and recognizing our nation's heroes. OMAC has expanded opportunities for the university community to recognize, learn about, and support the military affiliated community. In addition to organizing an annual Memorial Day program and Veterans Day recognition, OMAC has partnered with the following: the University of Chicago Law School and Law School veterans to bring awareness to the service of our female veterans, the Office of Equal Opportunity Programs and UChicago Medicine to bring attention to the service of veterans who openly serve and identify with the LGBTQ community, and the Honorable Senator Tammy Duckworth's office, Green Card veterans and UChicago faculty to bring awareness to U.S. veterans who are being deported from the United States. Today's event is a special one for me, not just because of my veteran status, but because today's events bring attention to the hidden wounds for service members and their families. As a service-connected veteran who experiences my own challenges, I can relate to some of the barriers you will hear from our panelists today. Service-connected injuries are not always visible to everyone, and they impact military families in various ways. As of September 2014, there were roughly 20% of veterans experiencing PTSD or depression, and 19% of veterans had TBIs. Of the veterans diagnosed with PTSD, over 50% of them do not seek treatment. Of those total number of reported PTSD cases, the Army accounted for over 67%, the Air Force 9%, the Navy 11%, and the Marine Corps accounted for 13%. I would also like to bring attention to some of the campus partners who are here to support our student population with services for equitable access to their educational needs. Please welcome Student Disability Services Director, Charnessa Warren.
Hi, I'm Charnessa, and I'm going to give you a brief overview of Student Disability Services. SDS is located on the corner of 55th and Ellis, and even though we are not there physically right now, we are still available to provide support both via Zoom and via telephone, and we're here Monday through Friday. We're fully committed to ensuring that our students with disabilities are able to fully participate in the university. And we do this through the provision of support services, and accommodations for a variety of types of accessibility needs. So whether the student arrives with a disability or you acquire a diagnosis while here at University of Chicago, and even if you become temporarily injured, we're here to provide some support. I always like to give the definition of disability because most individuals affiliate or assume that a disability has to deal with physical conditions, but we know that the definition of disability is a physical and or mental impairment that substantially limits a person in a major life activity. So you may have a record of having that impairment or even be considered an individual having that sort of impairment. And those major life activities include things that we do every day. So it's reading, writing, concentrating, walking, thinking. It's any of those normal activities that we do every single day. So if you fit into the definition of a person with a disability, whether that's physical or mental, your first step is just to identify to us. We want to know that you're here and how we might be able to help. So the SDS website is the best place to go to get started in this process, and here you'll find a wealth of resources. So under the Students tab here, there's a lot of information on how to get started with applying for services. We also offer a lot of announcements on this tab here where we provide information about internships, fellowships, opportunities, and upcoming events specifically geared towards individuals with various types of disabilities. We also offer a few jobs if you want to do some proctoring for exams or note-taking in classes. Those are all processed through here, and you can register with our office in getting started there. The disability accommodation process is an interactive process and a collaborative one between SDS, yourself, as a student with a disability, and then any of our other campus partners. So the first step is to submit an application to us. We will then schedule an intake interview with you so that we can hear your story and learn more about your condition and what the functional impairment might be. We will also ask for documentation if it's a non-obvious disability, but for those disabilities that are obvious, no documentation is typically required. We will then review that. It's reviewed by a committee, and that group of individuals will determine your eligibility for those services. And then you'll receive an accommodation letter. I also want to point out that the documentation that you share with us, if you choose to share the documentation with us, will be confidentially stored. So that is not shared with any other office. It's our office that manages that. And the letter that you receive that talks about your eligibility for accommodations, that letter does not list the actual diagnosis. It only lists what accommodations you're eligible for. That letter is then shared with an instructor, and you are the person who would disclose the diagnosis if you choose to with your faculty, but it is not a requirement and it's not an expectation. What the faculty will need to know to accommodate you will be listed in that letter, and that's the list of accommodations. We also have disability liaisons available in each of the academic divisions, so whatever academic division you are a part of, the information is available to you, and you can work with those liaisons there. Implementation is carried out by SDS office, the academic division, or any of our other campus partners, depending on what the need might be. Those typical accommodations are testing accommodations, so if you need extended time for exams, if you need note-taking assistance in courses, document conversion support services. We also offer a text-to-speech software to help with reading because there's a lot of reading in higher ed, so we offer that software to students. We also provide interpreting and captioning services, parking, transportation, facility access and barrier removal, clinical work, and field placement, depending on what your what academic division you're part of, teaching assistance, and some of those course flexibility if you have a chronic health-related condition that is recurring. So that's just a high-level overview. I just want to remind you that we're here remotely via Zoom and or telephone, and if you want to get started, visit our website. Thanks for having me today.
Thank you so much, Sharnessa. Next, I would like to introduce UChicago student wellness staff psychiatrist and a child of the U.S. veteran, Dr. ERIN HURST.
Good morning. Oh shoot, am I frozen? No, I'm good. Okay. Just got very quiet because you muted yourself, Alexandra. Thank you for the introduction. And yeah, just as Tarnessa was saying, we pivoted pretty quickly to Zoom as well with student counseling on campus. We do still have some folks in this building. My virtual background picture I took back in March is my office in Alumni House. And we're moving to the brand new University of Chicago Student Wellness Center on December 14th, which happens to be my husband's 50th birthday. So I'm going to start off by talking about the typical route toward our services. And Terrell's going to, I don't have slides prepared for today. It would distract me more than I'm already distracted at baseline. But Terrell can share our website. Wellness.uchicago.edu has a ton of helpful information. It is kept very up to date, including our most recent media campaign with several phrases, including "when your cup runneth under." It's so much so up to date that I think it may have more information than it definitely has more information than I'm going to share with you. So typical route to access our services, students can call us during our business hours, 8:30 to 5. They can leave messages as well, but it's easier to call during typical business hours. Our point of contact after the phone call is often a consultation and assessment with a therapist. And they make an assessment and recommendations. I will say a couple things about, there's this notion out there about what we do at student counseling and the services that we offer. And a tiny little piece of me dies every time I hear people talk about session limits. So if you forget everything else I say today, two things, but the first thing for you to remember is that we do not, in fact, have session limits at our counseling center for therapy. Really, what we're trying to do is help the most students with a finite resource and get people connected to what they truly need and what's indicated. So that is to say that if somebody is what they're seeking and it seems like the best course of treatment is short-term therapy, we do offer brief goal-directed therapy in-house. But if it's something where what's indicated seems to be something more longer term, we help to connect people to therapists in the community that can offer long-term services. To the alternative to this, I understand that it's what does short-term mean? How many sessions is that? It really is clinical judgment. And the alternative to this, if we were to offer longer-term therapy, would lead to longer wait times and frankly, harder transitions once somebody does get to a point of connecting to somebody they can work with longer term. So we offer individual therapy, couples counseling, group therapy, which right now in the era of COVID and Zoom is a lot more workshop and skills and strategies learning based. In terms of couples counseling, I want to make a point of saying that only one member of a couple needs to be eligible for student services. Everything that we do within our center or with one of our staff members via Zoom is covered by one's tuition and fees. And then if we refer out for longer term psychotherapy, like I mentioned, that's something that would be covered under one's healthcare insurance plan. We have case managers on staff as well. I'm not sure if AJ is on the call this morning because I was running a few minutes late myself. But we have case managers on staff who help us and help students to identify community providers that accept their insurance plans and make sure that they're making informed decisions with regards to cost. The student insurance plan has waived the co-payments for psychotherapy through, I believe, Monday, last I heard, and hopefully we'll be getting an update. But even when there are co-pays with the student insurance, it's a $10 per session without session limits in the community with an in-network therapist. By comparison, however, we also have psychiatrists like myself and on staff. We do offer long-term psychiatric medication management and evaluation. That has to do with the fact that if I am working with somebody and they get to be a point where they're stable on their medication, I'm seeing them for 25 minutes every 3 months or further spaced out. So we can inherently treat more people. It makes us a little bit less finite, but still a finite resource. And there's also not as many psychiatrists in the community to refer to. There are some, but it's an even more finite resource in the community for a lot of reasons we won't go into today. So like I said, everything I've talked to up until now is what's covered by tuition, or is what the typical route toward our services would be. Additionally, and I think TERRELL has been perfectly timed as usual and hit on our crisis on the website. So we also offer in the moment, during business hours, or after hours by phone, crisis intervention if somebody is truly in need of something urgent, emergent. And then we also several days a week offer Let's Talk, which can be a fully anonymous and more informal point of contact with one of our therapists. In the virtual space, that's something where somebody would email to set it up and get the link to present for Let's Talk, but they're still doing that. That started being offered very early in the spring quarter with our transition to Zoom as well. Last thing, all of our services, especially if somebody can't give their name at Let's Talk, but regardless, it's come to my attention that there's been some questions around confidentiality. All of us on staff at student counseling are bound by privacy laws and HIPAA in particular. So we don't release information without somebody's express written consent to anyone, not the university. We're not military providers. I'm not going to be going to your CO after a meeting with me. It's really and truly only in the most severe and extreme safety concerns where we would breach somebody's confidentiality. I don't ever release information to the rest of the university writ large about patients of mine without not just their written permission, but a conversation about what it is that I'm going to be releasing to somebody else. So that's a quick, again, as Tarnessa mentioned, overview of our services. And I'm going to turn it back over to Alexandra because I'm looking forward to the rest of the presentations for today.
Thank you so much, Dr. Hurst. Lastly, I would like to introduce a person who unfortunately was impacted more severely by a service member being injured and ultimately succumbing to his hidden wounds. Walida Bennett, a Gold Star mother, lost her son, Saad Muhammad, on January 4th, 2013.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Alexander. Thank you, everyone, for having me today. I think this is a very important topic that sometimes gets perhaps overlooked. So let me start by saying that Alexandra did a very good job in giving you an overview of the impact that the death by suicide rates have on veterans. So if you think about 6,100 individuals that have a death by impact, death by suicide, that's 6,100 families that have also been impacted. That at that magnitude, we really need to begin to kind of think about what do we do to support the families. So back in 2013, or prior to that, my son was in the military. He was Army, Special Forces, got out, worked for NSA, very high security clearance. So one of the things that we know the military probably contributes to, not consciously, but perhaps unconsciously, is making it very difficult for people to seek help for mental health issues. Historically in our country, what we've done is kind of focused on physical health, and mental health has been an afterthought. We're getting a little bit better now because you have a vast amount of people that are being impacted by trauma across the board. But what I began to see with my son, and I have to also preface it by saying I come out of a military family. My father was part of the Montford Point Marines, which were the first African Americans accepted into the Marine Corps. So I've been around military people literally all my life. But what I began to notice, and this really, I noticed this right after my son's basic training, was this inward withdrawal. Somehow or another, the light that he had disappeared. What I attribute that to was the way that I explained it is that his original identity was gone. And now he was transported into this military cultural environment that took on a separate identity. He was in the Iraq engagements, came home, he had a family, 2 young daughters, and maybe 3 years or so after he was out, we began to see some real significant issues that manifested itself in terms of his engagement with his family, his impact with his job, the self-medication through alcohol use, the periods of time where communication would just stop, right? So, you know, there was absolutely no engagement at all. Then in November of 2012, I received a phone call from my daughter-in-law that was just really hysterical. So I flew out, they were living in Maryland, I flew out to Maryland, and the goal was to get him into the VA. Trying to navigate that long distance was quite a challenge. So my father had a friend out there, and I called him. He came over, and we basically had a quasi-intervention session with him to convince him to go to the VA. Because of course, you know that in mental health, unless someone is willing to go, nothing is going to happen, particularly when you're an adult. So we got him into the VA. They got him on a mental health ward. The lockdown served as a trigger. He became incredibly angry, but we said, okay, well, maybe this will work. Well, it didn't. He left. So the next step was, okay, maybe we should bring him here. So my husband and I began to kind of talk about what are the resources that we have, who can we connect to. So we started actually going through our network, and we were able to connect. And some of you may know Dr. John Munt at the VA. Yes, a very, very good friend of mine now, right? So we were able to connect with him. I mean, part of it is my background is in mental health. And so part of it is trying to, how do you navigate that mental health system that can be not as easy to navigate when you're an adult, because it really is up to that person to decide. But we were able to get him here. We were able to get him to see Dr. Munt. We were trying to keep him here. That didn't happen. And I think because it was around the holidays itself probably served as a trigger for him. We did bring the children, and at the time, my granddaughter, my oldest granddaughter was 11. The youngest one was 9. He left, went back to Maryland. The girls stayed here. And on January the 3rd, I got the phone call. Worst day of my life. Worst day of my family's life. A brother involved, grandmother, cousins, and his children. So it's this wide, broad network of people whose lives now were completely turned upside down. I think in my anger, the question that I asked, well, where is the church? Where is the community in all of this? So I began to, after, kind of trying to plan services and trying to negotiate that, one of the bigger challenges that we had to negotiate was how not to bury him on his eldest daughter's birthday. Really challenging, got through that. Okay, now think about a 9-year-old and a 12-year-old and where they are in their life cycle. and they lose a parent. Incredibly bright girls. So even though their mother, who also was a vet, didn't really tell them what happened, they knew. Because think about, if you're in a military family and someone is suffering from invisible wounds and is showing up 3 or 4 years later after they're coming out of the military, which tends to be trajectory that we look at for these issues to manifest themselves, they've been living in a household of chaos where doors were locked, where he had episodes. So now they have to navigate this on the edge of pre-adolescence. The eldest daughter began to mimic his symptoms. Hospitalizations, they went in therapy, hospitalizations, cutting behavior. The youngest daughter sucked it all in and decided, well, you know, I'll be the adult in the family. Until her sophomore year. She's now a senior. She's living with us currently. Till her sophomore year. And then, of course, everything hit the fan, right? The mom, now this has been 7 going on 8 years. The mom has still not cleaned out his belongings. They're packed up in bins in the garage. She recently moved to a new house and just took that with him. So my response was, okay, we have to do something about this. So what I began to do was ask those that I knew in the faith community to say, okay, how many military families and veterans do you have in your congregation? And no one could answer that question. And I'll put a pin on it in here because we're running out of time. And then I'll come back to talk about the work that we're doing that is a direct result of having lost my son.
Thank you, Alita, for sharing your story, your experiences, and your passionate work in supporting our heroes. And thank you, Sharnessa and Dr. Hurst, for sharing some of the resources at UChicago for our heroes. Turning to today's program, our panel discussion features our moderator, Dr. Matthew Schumacher, a U.S. Navy veteran, psychologist, and UChicago alum. Zachary CRAHEN, U.S. Army veteran, first year at Harris, and founder of the new student group at Harris, Military Affiliated Students of Harris, also known as MASH. John HOJEK, U.S. Marine Corps veteran, second year at SSA, and founder of the new student group, SSA Corps. Eric SNYDER, U.S. Army veteran, first year in the college, and peer advisor at UChicago. Ryan Shannon, U.S. Navy veteran, Project Red Team director, and Paralympic champion. Please join me in welcoming our esteemed panel and moderator.
Well, good morning, everybody. I'm out on the West Coast, so it's a little bit earlier here still. I think a lot of what's been said is really, really critically important. My role today is to make this not about my story, but part of my story is kind of walking both sides of this line that we've been discussing thus far, and we've had some brave folks willing to tell their story that have started to tell their story, and they're going to do a little bit of that here today. I was a Navy psychologist for a decade, 10 years. So that means I wore the uniform, and I kind of dealt firsthand with some of these problems in my patients and my friends and my peers, and I also transitioned out of the military a little over 2 years ago now. So I'm also a veteran who's transitioned. But like I said, it's not about my story today. It's about the story of these gentlemen that are willing to take some time to talk a little bit about what they've been through, what their transition is like. And I want to put a pin on the emphasis of what actually works. All right, so we have success stories as well as stories that are less happy and that I think we would all view as failures, that we've left people behind, which is not part of the military ethos. So as a frame, before we get started, I want to tell the folks on the line that we are collectively the front line in mental health, in silent wounds, in invisible wounds, in overt wounds, and all the kinds of different struggles that we experience, because there are some problems with our system. But the biggest problems are usually what happen when people withdraw, when people aren't able to talk, aren't willing to talk. So my encouragement is to look at these stories with this idea in mind, and that is to find a way or make a way. All right, I think that's what the folks on this panel are going to talk about, the different ways they were able to find a way or make a way, the people that found a way or made a way to reach out to them, to get through to them. We all want to help. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. But when you want to hurt, I think it's a relatively simple proposition, even though it is very complicated at times, to figure out how to get to the right answers. What I'm going to encourage you to think about today as we're honoring the hurt is a simple question that is probably the first one I teach to anybody that is in a helping professional, a psychiatrist, a psychologist, a corpsman, an Army medic, or the other types of folks who are in these positions. The question is simply, where does it hurt and how can I help? Okay, so guys, I'm just going to go left to right on my screen here, which means, John, can you kick us off and just kind of give us a little bit of a overview of what you did in the military and a little bit of how you got hurt and a little bit about how you got here?
Yeah, thanks, Matthew. Thanks everyone for presenting so far. So my name is John HOJEK. Currently, I'm a second year clinical social work student at the University of Chicago. Currently, my internship is at Rush Road Home, and it's just a fantastic program. I can speak more to it later, but if anyone has questions, it's an intensive outpatient program. I also right now internship for the San Francisco VA remotely through, I'm a member of the graduate program, Health Administration and Policy. And I'm interning looking at post-COVID-19 equitable telehealth care, specifically for rural communities. There's a big need for rural communities in a gap with VA care. So my service was 2005 to 2009 in the U.S. Marine Corps. I served with the 1st Battalion 7 Marines as a infantryman. I did 2 tours of Iraq, and essentially, just between duties of actually, I would say more or less probably some of the unspoken duties, right? The stuff that you end up doing in war that you weren't trained for. And then on top of losing my buddies, kind of just left an impact on myself and my personality.
All right, thank you, John. Eric, I see you next.
Hey, how's it going, everyone? Thanks so much for joining us. So I was in the Army for about 7 years, just got out this past March. Most of that time was spent as a special operations medic with the Special Operations Resuscitation Team. As far as my injuries go, there's no real one particular instant. In fact, there's not an instant in which I can point to that I did get injured. Kind of like John said, it was more accumulation of things, sleep deprivation, not taking care of the body, rucking 30 miles with 80 pounds on your back, and that kind of all added up. So I mean, like, one thing, I had a hernia that had for 3 years, never got fixed, dislocated my shoulder, and they gave me ibuprofen, sent me back out. So stuff like that just kind of added up. And then about last summer, I finally, even then, I was about to not go to the hospital. I was just going to go. I thought I had anemia or something from not sleeping enough, not having proper diet, and went to the hospital because I had some bruising and was just feeling really faint and fatigued. And they found out my platelet count was about 10,000, to the point where I could have spontaneous bleeding in the brain. And after some, testing and stuff, they called it idiopathic thrombocytopenic purpura, which just means we don't know what's causing it, but your body's rejecting your platelets and you can't clot and stuff. So that all kind of came to a head. And I'd say that was probably the most severe of my injuries, but it's just one of many that, you know, like John said, it's just accumulation over the years that just kind of adds up. So that's really my story. As far as deployments and stuff, I did do a year, 6 months overseas in the Middle East for combat deployment, and then some work down in South Central America as well. So that's a little bit about myself.
Great, Eric. Thanks. Ryan, I see you next.
Hey everybody, thanks for having me. I'm Ryan Shannon. While I am not a Paralympic champion, though I appreciate that, I did do Prince Aries Invictus Games and I got silver in track. So that'll come back later when we talk a little bit about my injuries. Still Paralympic style events and things like that, but I never made it to the big show. Still trying, maybe one day, right? I served in the Navy for 9 years. I was on submarines. I'm also 6'6", so obviously I didn't make very good decisions from the get-go. I've had quite a few bumps and bruises on the old head there, and I think I lost count of stitches in my face and things like that. Started the military at 6'6", left at 6'5". A bunch of surgeries. I had a broken neck. I got bored on the submarine, joined up with Joint Special Operations Command as a comms guy, forward deployed out of Bagram Air Force Base. I've got physical injuries. I've got invisible injuries. I've got PTSD. I have anxiety disorders. I'm in complete paralysis of my left foot and ankle. The end of my career pretty much played out like a bad movie, where doctors come in front of your family with a clipboard and tell you all these things you can't do anymore. And I believed them for about a month or so. During that month, I wrote my suicide letter. I made my suicide plan. I saw myself as a burden to everybody around me. And through intervention from my wife, I never attempted, and it's why I'm still here. I took that and kind of used it as a pivot point to change everything that was going on. There's an old version of me that doesn't exist anymore. He's gone, but this new version of me, he's kind of cool, and I like what he does. So I'm gonna keep rolling with that guy. I'm the director of what's called Project Red Team with Hope for the Day. We are a proactive suicide prevention, mental health education resource. It's all peer-to-peer led. It's clinically backed. We got a group of about 500 people right now that are actively talking about their mental health. And we're working with the FBI, we're working with the Air Force, we're working with all kinds of different people on it, and we're seeing success. We're seeing people come back to us a day or two after hearing our education or talking with us and asking for help. And I think that's my purpose. We're going to talk a little bit about a purpose, right, Dr. Schumacher? And that purpose gets taken from you when you take that uniform off. And sometimes you don't know where that purpose comes back. And I'm here to tell you that I'm building an army of people who are refining their purpose and using it for good and making the change that needs to be changed. And that's it. I laugh at my disabilities and things like that, so feel free to laugh along with me. We won't take offense. You all have permission now to laugh at the one-legged dude running around on the track, right? Thanks for having me.
Thank you. All right, Zach.
Hello, everybody. My name is Zach CRAHEN. I am a first-year student at Harris, Masters of Public Policy. I'm a U.S. Army veteran. I spent 6.5 years in the Army. I graduated from West Point in 2012. Got out in August of 18. I was an armor officer, so spent most of my time as a scout doing reconnaissance. I had a short deployment to Jordan in the summer of 16, doing some counter-ISIS support operations. Nothing too sexy. We had a weird mission at my where I spent the bulk of my time at Fort Bliss and El Paso that precluded our brigade from going on like traditional deployments. As far as kind of like why I'm on this panel, I have the standard disabilities for like back and neck. You know, some mornings it feels like I'm 65-year-old man getting out of bed, but really it's a lot more of the internal stuff that I think we've touched on. My transition from the military was not great, and my challenge ever since March 4th, 2017 has been addressing my self-sabotaging behavior. And it was because it manifested itself while I was at Fort Benning doing training. I was at the schoolhouse to move on to my next assignment at Fort Campbell, take command in Rakasans. Pretty selective unit. It's hard to get in there unless you're a pretty good officer generally. And I got a DUI. I was coming home from a bar. I met a nice girl there. I was, going to do what, pretty standard stuff for a mid 20-year-old guy, and took it upon myself to get myself home. And from that point on until when I separated from the Army in August of 18, I was in limbo. And I spent, what is that, about 18 months, 17 months, basically wearing an albatross around my neck, which if no one knows Rhyme of the Ancient Mariner, your high school failed you. But it's a story about, a guy that kills an albatross and he has to wear it around his neck is a shame. It's a bad sign for sailors. And that's basically what happened is I had to walk into the same building that I had been going to, knowing that everybody knew what happened, and having to face them, having to just kind of swallow my pride and eventually just get dressed down day by day by day until and the best part was generally folks get several months to kind of plan their transition and leave. I was given 2 weeks, and if it wasn't for having some very strong friends, I was already in a free fall, and I had been for quite some time. I'd made a plan. It was very close to completely breaking, having my entire identity stripped away, feeling like I didn't deserve any of the stuff on the wall behind me, going to West Point, being a successful officer. It was all a waste of time, and I didn't have any right to claim it. I was, and still deal with that. So luckily there was friends that I could turn to, because the Army didn't do anything. They didn't care. The day that I had, thought I was reaching my breaking point, I finally called mental health, and their response was, well, we can't get you in for probably 2 weeks. And I was barely keeping it together over the phone. I was like, all right, well, I'm probably going to do this. And so I think the big takeaway just ends up being that the camaraderie and the fellowship and brotherhood that you have in the military is ultimately kind of what saved me, and I think is something that a lot of us can relate to. And then the absence of that when we leave. So yeah, that's all I got. So another uplifting story.
All right. Well, thank you all for being willing to put some of that out there, and the guys on the call that have been courageous enough to volunteer to be panelists here all know this about me, but I actually had a major spinal reconstructive surgery on my way out the door of the military as well, and I am actually a success story in that regard. Military medicine, Walter Reed Hospital did an outstanding job, and I walked the same day I had surgery. That being said, I have a little bit in common with these folks, and I have a lot of pet projects, and including a pet service dog in training who's, doing her job extremely well right now. Oh boy, okay. So she is she is one of those walking and talking signs that you're not okay, right? That makes the invisible visible. And I'm a big proponent of all of these things. So guys, what I want to get into here, some of the things that I've heard across the people have presented thus far. I hear a lot about questioning whether you're legitimate. You believe what you did was legitimate. You deserve the care. You deserve the attention for your injuries that are either invisible or are not as legitimate or significant as that of other people. Jump on in, the water's warm, right?
Yeah, let me start off by saying that's all BS. Sorry for the crude letters that I'm using here. But you get to be selfish with your mental health. It's your mental health, plain and simple. There's no such thing as pain Olympics. What I went through is going to be different than what Eric went through, and Zach and John and Matt. But I go out on a limb and say we all got PTSD, right? Is that written down in a file somewhere based on you? But we all got it for different reasons, right? So you can't play this game with yourself of somebody else's stuff is way worse off than mine, because that leads you down the road to writing your suicide note in your plan, and that's how we get to that point, is by playing this game of this pain Olympics where or so and so's got something worse off, and I'm not going to deal with my stuff right now because of any reason, XYZ, pick and choose, you know. I always, when I do like these education pieces and these talks and stuff, I always tell everybody that, like, you're allowed to have bad days. You don't have to be 100% of the time. That's crazy. But you get to have bad days. And then when you start recovering from it, guess what? You're still going to have some bad days along the road. And if you put yourself in that mind frame where that's okay to have, that's okay for that to happen. And as long as you got the tools in your toolbox to start climbing back out of that darkness and that hole, and you have a group of people around you who understand it and just listen, that's how we start lessening these numbers in these cases that are going on. Thank you.
Yeah, if I can jump in too, kind of going off the same point. I think all of us can say that really at the end of the day, when it comes to our injuries, like, at least I feel this way. I don't ask for much, you know, I don't expect much. I joined the military full well knowing the risks, and I did it, you know, for myself because I wanted to. And at the end of the day, like, really the only thing I ask when I go to the hospital or the VA or whatever is, you know, help me with my pain and help me sleep. Like, those are the two things. I mean, I can't remember the last day I woke up when I didn't have pain. I always joke when they ask me, like, oh, do you have pain today? Like, yeah, I mean, I'm awake, so I obviously have pain. So, I mean, when I'm searching for help, I'm really not asking for a whole lot. And I feel like when going to the VA or going to the hospital, there's this inability to listen. That's really all it takes. And for my end, you know, I won't go too into details, but since 2017, I mean, maybe even longer than that, but I mean, 2017 was when I finally got shoulder surgery after 2 years. And my dad passed away, like, literally that same month over Christmas that I got shoulder surgery from cancer. He was 49 years old, had never smoked in his life, and he got lung cancer somehow and died like 2 months later. And then it was, you know, deploy, I had a teammate die in a training accident and had a couple of friends die overseas. And then it's come back, do more missions, train up. And then the blood disorder thing happened. And I initially thought I had cancer. I was like, all right, well, it's my time to go. And I was good with it. And I show up to the hospital, and they told me I was probably just dehydrated. And I wanted to punch the doctor in the face, but I was just like, so, like, whatever, I'm dying anyway, so I don't care. But, like, the fact that, one, I was a special operations medic, so obviously I knew I wasn't dehydrated. But just not knowing who I was, not listening to me, not looking at my history at all. And you face this over and over, because eventually he came back and he's like, oh yeah, by the way, we were wrong. You actually might be bleeding to death right now. But same thing, go in, you know, finally get my sleep disorders treated because I was only sleeping like 2 hours a night. 3 psychiatrists told me, you know, oh, just do a sleep journal. 3 in a row. I finally told the one that he was gonna get someone killed because he was doing this. I told him, I'm like, I've done 3 sleep journals. I'm a medic. I just want sleep. That's all I want. I just want to sleep for 6 hours straight. And they couldn't listen to me. And it just over and over, you see people run into that. where I feel like a lot of us aren't asking for much. Like we just like, hey, just help us with our pain, help us with, sleeping, like just listen. That's all we ask for. And I feel like it's just so difficult for some people that sometimes.
Yeah, man, I'll piggyback off of that. I didn't realize that we shared a similar tragic experience. Yeah, so I got out in August of 18, and then in December on my birthday, I made it home from where I was living in Nashville, and was informed. My parents told me that my mom had stage 4 pancreatic cancer, and then she had been working that week. She was a nurse practitioner, nurses, doctors, worst patients, because she just ignored it, I think, because I think she knew, and she's like, all right, well, I'm going to keep doing what I want to do. And yeah, about a month and a half later, she was gone. So, and yeah, I mean, when it rains, it pours. And I think, and then immediately after finding out the news, of course, self-medication hit a new high, and found myself getting mugged in Italy when I went to go see a friend. And it was just, one thing after another. And once again, it just ended up being having to lean on a lot of friends, and seeing like a dozen different psychologists. No offense, Matt, but not everyone is a rock star in their field, and there's been some good ones along the way. But yeah, I think for all of us, it's like an ongoing journey. We kind of have like this trailer that we got to kind of pull with us. And it gets lighter and lighter, but it's kind of there. So, yeah, it's, that's why I created MASH. I know that's why John created, the brigade over there. It's so that we can kind of foster communities like this, and, make sure that we know we're not alone through our own personal struggles, and that there are no, like Ryan said, it's not a measuring contest of each other's, pain and everything. It's everybody's got their own story.
And even kind of building that, right? I think, kind of reflecting back, like it does come from a bit of a culture, right? Like, we're going to suffer because, well, a couple of reasons, but like, let's say for one, like we're going to suffer because someone else needs it better. That means I'm going to put myself in harm's way so someone else can live a better life, right? Well, like that's why I signed up for the Iraq war. So I was very much willing to suffer my entire self, literally, for someone else, right? So even in kind of going to ask for help, it's still that mentality, on top of, well, I don't deserve it because I didn't see this or didn't do that, or whatever the case may be. And as an emerging clinician, now I always, it's kind of like, well, hey, that's kind of like, are you avoiding like what you want to talk about? Are you avoiding the truths like that? And it's just easier to say someone else deserves it. It's important to counter that, like, well, why don't I, John, deserve to go get help? Like, what are the facts that say, I went left instead of right on, this street in Iraq, so I don't get help. But to validate that feeling at the same sense, I do think there is a bit of policy involved with that, and I think it can stem from psychological and program screenings, right? So like the VA is going to screen you or road home or whatever and say, hey, you're fit for this program, or you are diagnosed with this, or you have this or that. And essentially, if a veteran has an issue and it doesn't meet a certain criteria, they are being told they don't deserve the help, right? They cannot get the help, whether it's some condition of honorable, other non-honorable, whatever the case may be. So there is a bit of truth to why veterans are, they say, like, I don't deserve this. Not only one, because it may be a personal thing, but two, they may have very well been told they don't deserve it.
So guys, this is, we're doing the polite version so far, which I deeply appreciate, and I'm sure the folks online do too. But I got each other's mics. I will make it my personal duty to feel failure if I don't get somebody to cry. No, I'm just kidding. That's not what I'm going to do. So this is the rub, guys. Everybody's got pain, right? And I think folks have done a pretty good job of demonstrating how legitimate their pain is, not by sort of arguing for it. That's a huge issue. I'm in the boat too, right? I had a sleep doc appointment with the VA that was double booked with a fellow, and I had to teach him what CBTI was, right? So there's a lot of those stories going around. Let's see if we can't get into, how bad did it get and what turned it? What did you guys have to see? What did you have to do? In other words, ultimately, what worked?
That's a rough question. That's a loaded question for sure.
I told you I wasn't messing around.
So there's a couple okay, so I have a TBI, so you're gonna have to repeat part 1, part 2, part 3 for me so I can get through this fully, and that's okay. Also, I teach people for a living, so somebody hired a dude with a TBI to stand in front of people and teach. So anyway, besides that, so what happened? So I'm gonna focus the story on let's do all of it. So I have physical injury, I have emotional injury, suicidal ideation. Suicidal ideation is what changed everything for me, obviously. But what led to that was, we already touched on it. My stuff isn't combat related, man. I broke my foot at a beach, skimboarding in Hawaii. It was beautiful. It was the greatest place ever to break your foot. And then it was misdiagnosed for 3 months by Army Medical. And they told me I had a sprained ankle, and I was trying to make chief. So I went to PT and treated it like I had a sprained ankle and did all the exercise and this and that, which 3 months later, when I got an MRI, they're like, you just tore everything inside of your foot apart. Your bones literally sawed through tendons and muscle and stuff. And they're like, we've never seen anything like this. Like, this is wild. And I was like, cool, awesome. So how do we fix that? Because I walked in here thinking my foot was broke, and you guys sent me away with some ibuprofen and an ACE bandage. And I had to fight you guys to get the MRI, So my foot heals, I get in, start getting, long story short, I have this complex regional pain syndrome. My brain still thinks my foot's broken to this day, and I got incomplete paralysis, right? So it works sometimes. Most of the time I have to wear a prosthetic device to walk. Running was my outlet for my mental health. From middle school all the way up, I was a runner. That's what I did. Like, if I had a bad day, I went out and ran, put some music on, and just beat my body up, my legs up as much as I could, and came back and felt better. And doctors walked in and took that from me. They said, you'll never run again. You're in a wheelchair right now. We don't know if you're going to leave a wheelchair. And so now I'm sitting on my couch. My career's ending. My purpose is being taken from me. Not just my purpose in the military, but now I can't use the outlet that I had for my mental health. And that's where it got dark. I was just like, I'm done with this. Your brain's weird. If you touch a hot stove, you back away real quick. But in a crisis stage, your brain tricks you into thinking killing yourself is the way to go. It's the right choice. You're going to solve all your problems with that. And that's super messed up. I still don't understand it to this day, What changed it? My wife grabbing me by the scruff of my collar and looking me dead in the eyes and said, you have 2 small boys and I need you. You're not doing this here on our couch. Head on outside and figure your life out again. That's it. It was tough love. And I went outside with my headphones and I started crutching around my neighborhood, trying to figure out what I needed to do. And I was listening to music, and certain music hit me at the right time. And I came back that day and I was like, I'm going to teach myself to run again. That's what I'm going to do. I don't know why doctors get to choose that for me. I feel like I should be able to make that decision. And that's what I did. And then there's medals back there that's why they're front and center. They're not because I'm braggadocious or anything like that. It's because I could point at something that doctors told me I wouldn't be able to do. People a lot smarter than me said I couldn't do. And I'd be like, look, I did it. It's right there. And every time my kids bring an issue with me that they can't do something, they know this story like the back of their hand, because I throw that at them. Hey, you can do this. You absolutely can. I don't run anymore though. I'm over it. I don't want to run anymore. I'm done with it. I'm putting a lot of effort into changing this suicide issue in our community. And I think that's what my purpose, I know that's why I'm still here. I know that's what my purpose is, to tell my story, to light this path, but also bring in Dr. Schumacher and Dr. Odom and Zach and John and Eric and share their stories. I can only share one story. You know what I mean? I haven't lived the life of a special operator or things like that, but those stories need to be shared as well, because I can only light a percentage of this path, and it's only the way I did it, but it's not going to work for everybody. So the more people I get in there using their stories as power, and now they can light a different section of the path, and eventually we can have that whole path lit. And now we just need to lead people down it. And I think it's very possible. Thank you for my TED Talk. I appreciate it.
I can relate to that a whole lot. That it's really two things for me. I was given the word that the Army was going to let me leave with an honorable discharge about 3 weeks, I think, after I had kind of made my decision, and felt it just felt like this kind of sinking feeling. You just really withdraw inwardly into like this really, really, really dark spot that it's like gravity ceases to exist or something. And what really helped me is I'm pretty expressive, and I started journaling about 6 months or so after getting arrested. And the night I was like sitting in my tub, just letting the shower hit me, and I like, all right, well, we're gonna figure out how to get some sleeping pills, and we're gonna come right back here as soon as we can, and just fill the tub up, and that'll be it. And just kind of sink into no more. So the sinking feeling was kind of a theme. And I remember that night when I finally, decided, all right, well, I'm getting kind of cold, going to bed, and then still being in that moment, writing it all down. And then the next day, reviewing it and just being like, holy shit, that I can't believe I had gotten to that point. And, fortunately, the good news that I was going to be able to leave came not too long after that, because I'd kind of rebounded and not pursued sleeping meds. But still, it got really close. And then, 6 months later, kind of like what Ryan was talking about, when I was mugged, I tore my ACL. I'd been in really good shape, and that was something I leaned on heavily, was just running and working out, and just putting music on and forgetting about stuff for a little bit, enjoying that runner's high or whatever afterwards. And it kind of helped level myself off a bit. But I still have a torn ACL. I literally missed Women in Boots yesterday because I finally got an appointment through the VA to get knee surgery, and that's going to be happening in January. But I haven't really been able to be the active person that I once was to help cope with all of this. So it's been a carousel of different, positive and negative ways to navigate existing trauma from all of this. And, it's something that I feel like I've really thrown myself into this grad school thing because of all of the personal dissatisfaction that existed prior to getting here, and creating MASH, and then creating the podcast Second Service, and being involved with all of these different things. I feel like I have almost a duty to kind of give back to the veteran community because of being kind of chewed up by the green machine, and how it's like, we'll find another guy to do your job. It's not a big deal. We got a whole bunch of them. So that feeling of insignificance is something that I never want someone else to feel. And certainly if you're coming straight into grad school from the military, you're navigating two different transitions at once. And that becomes particularly difficult. So, events like this and folks like this are really, I think, what is most important, because I don't think you can really rely on a lot of the different systems that are in place. It's really the people in your life that are going to help you out. Kind of like Ryan's wife, a lot of my friends, all of you guys on the call, I think that's what really kind of helps you out. At least it does for me, and continuing to write.
I'd say if I could piggyback off Zach what said, I think he brings up a good point that's really been key to both some of my struggles and some of the ways that kept me out of those struggles, is that that feeling that you're replaceable. I mean, I found out really quickly. It was actually really funny. When I went down with an injury, they replaced me within 2 days with the guy that was the same height, same skin color, same hair color, looked exactly like me. And I was like, holy shit, they can literally find another me and replace me with them, which he wasn't as good as me. But regardless, there is this sense of, that you are super replaceable, and you find that out really quick. And I think in Syria was the first moment I kind of had that, what the fuck excuse my language, what am I doing? Like, if I die here, like, is it really worth it? Like, everyone back home is spreading all this false information about what's going on in Syria and Iraq. Like, do I really want to give my life for those people? And I came back and I kind of kept thinking about that. And like this whole idea of, coming out of your injuries and kind of a catharsis, personally, it never ends. Like, there isn't that catharsis. Like in, Hollywood, I think, does a bad job of, there's a happy ending and then the credits roll. Life doesn't end after the credits. I mean, every day has its struggles. And like I said, I mean, it's kind of morose, but I think the big thing that keeps me going is that I don't want to be a statistic. I mean, I don't want to be just another crazy vet that shot himself and become some campaign slogan for a politician pushing gun control or pushing, mental health or something. Like, I don't want to do that. It's like, that's not who I am.
One of the 22 push-ups a day, basically.
Yeah. Yeah. Like, I don't want to be that guy. Like, I don't want to be just, yeah. What's up, Matt?
Anybody, just show of hands, because it's amazing how fast this time goes when you're actually being timed. Anybody have that crazy veteran moment? Even if it wasn't really a crazy veteran moment, it looked just enough like it that, yep. All right, so pretty much everybody on this call had that moment that it's like, that isn't gonna, oh crap, that's me, right? That thing that's, and what happened after that? Did anything really change? Not for me, except that bad thing happened that was embarrassing, that, uh-oh, we're all still here. That's my experience for a lot of folks. The hurt that we honor is as much to our pride as it is to anything else, right? And I'm not trying to demean it. The pride of service, the pride of having made a commitment, the pride of rank and training and deployment, it's real. So I got to shift gears here, or else Terrell might actually kill me. He's far enough away that I don't think he can make the shot, but you never know, right? So, and I'm so sorry, ma'am. Walida, is that how I say your name?
That's correct.
All right, good. We want to make sure we get you back into this conversation and shift gears to as close as I'm going to come, Ryan and all, to purpose, right? So as we are running out of time, I'm going to say one more thing about pain and pride and hurt. If you guys haven't noticed, psychological pain, anxiety, stress, but especially pain, especially something we call in the suicide area that I've done research in for years, psychache, right? Mm-hmm. Psychological pain is real, but it's a lot more like gas than it is like a measurable quantity, right? And what I mean by that is, if you got a jar, we're all a jar, and gas expands to fill the entire space, right? So no matter what your pain is, it covers everything, right? You could be saying it's 3 out of 10, or it's 9 out of 10, or it's 14 out of 10, which a lot of guys say too, right? It's all true. That gas expands in your container to fill it all up. And that's what makes this harder, right? Because when that cup is full, what else do you do? What do you gotta unhitch from? What do you gotta put down? But I think we've got enough time here to hear some stories, including, ma'am, if you could please start us off with where some of the purpose came from and what some of the things that you've done to help. And if you've got any experience with the University of Chicago and and OMAC. Please try to fit that in because I might just be pushing us to the end of our time here, whether I like it or not.
Well, let me just say that my connection to OMAC is Terrell Odom, who's become my new partner in crime as we, try to push the broader community to really understand the issues that impact veterans and their families. Since the military only occupies about 1% of the population, the vast majority of those that did not serve really don't have a clue of what it's like to be part of a military family. So there's a cultural context. So my purpose actually, as I said before, my anger, I began to ask the question, well, where is the community? What I knew was that there were a lot of individuals within the community and certainly within the VA that was providing direct services, and that I had no interest in that. But what I did have an interest in is saying, all right, where is the connection between faith and behavioral health? And for those of you that, come through the clinical programs, there's very little relationship or connection between those two spaces, right? And we're not talking about people getting into the church and joining the church, but what we are talking about, because the Multi-Faith Veteran Initiative, which I founded and I'm the director, is housed at the Egan office of DePaul University, really focuses on community because that's what they do. And the question that I began to ask those that were in the faith community was, how many military families do you have within your congregation? Not one church could answer the question because, of course, no one's asking the question, right? And many ministers are veterans, but they never asked that question. So one of the things that I began to say was, what would it look like if we could create circles of support within the communities that were primarily organized by faith-based institutions and churches? So the work that we do is grounded in a methodology that's called asset-based. What we believe is it's a ground-up approach and not a top-down approach. That veterans really are assets, and they leave their communities to go off to service, but when they end their service, they come back to those communities. How are those communities organized to receive them and support them? So within the span of 7 years, what we have done is we have built a organization that really works within the heart of the communities. We have about 9 sites that are spread out throughout the metropolitan Chicago area that spans about 18 communities, including Waukegan. And each of those sites are different. We are in communities such as Woodlawn, Bronzeville, Washington Park, Roseland, Beverly, Austin community, Rogers Park, as I said, Waukegan. And each of those sites, what they do is we help them to build capacity by reaching out to those resources that are in the community and also veterans. We have one site, which has been with us since its beginning, that has a cadre of about 300 veterans that come on a regular basis until COVID to really just kind of share. We also have a curriculum that's called an Ubuntu curriculum, which is basically a moral injury curriculum, right? That it's not really about PTSD. There's an intersection between PTSD and moral injury, but it's also about this transition. So all of you have kind of talked about that. Everybody's transition is different. It looks different. So what does that look like to move from one space to another space and also be connected to those that have served? We also have what we call a veteran read program that engages veterans in the lifeblood of the community. They go in schools once a week to tutor young people, and the connections that they have to young people really begins to bridge that divide, and also begins, particularly in the communities that we serve are primarily communities of color and marginalized community, where there is a tremendous amount of trauma that mimics the trauma that many veterans experience. What does that look like when you get veterans engaged with young people to help them navigate that space? That is the work that we do. We recently began to look at the issues of women vets. So the conversation yesterday was absolutely right on point. And I'll put the link up, but we are also hosting a Women's Veterans Conversation tomorrow, because what we're trying to do is understand what are the critical issues that are impacting women vets. And someone said, listening. What we find is people don't listen. They talk about a lot of programs, but they never talk to the people that the programs are supposed to serve. So therefore, they don't really know whether or not it's work. I describe it as, let's throw something on the wall and see what sticks, and we'll go with that. So that's the work, and that is my purpose. And what I've come to understand is all of the work that I have done throughout my professional career prepared me for the work that I'm doing right now.
That's amazing. That's what it takes when you've got some miles on the tires of dealing with loss and trying to turn it into something different, to harness it. Guys, we're getting a little short on time here, so let's talk again a little bit more about purpose. But keep in mind, you know, we are here at the University of Chicago. We all obviously have a lot of interactions with TERRELL and the OMAC, you know, another thing that I hope that you say a little bit about as you kind of keep talking about your purpose is, you know, what changes could the community, the university, you know, the Office of Military and Veteran Affairs, what could be done that would really help veterans and their families? What would you change and why? Somebody just solve all of that right now, go.
All right, I'll say something real quick. And Ms. Walita hit it right on the head, is that don't treat them like statistics. Don't treat us like, you know, just a demographic. We're human beings. Like, every one of us here has a name. I'm not a gender pronoun, a sexuality, and ethnicity. Like, that's the one thing that's pushed me, is to, you know, constantly break those barriers and not be a statistic. And the sooner, you know, when we all can just view each other as people, like, that should be the first question we always ask is, what's your name? Tell me a little bit about yourself, you know? So I think right there, it's just kind of trying to break those stereotypes always gives me that drive and that purpose, and then reaching out to other people.
I would say, we touched on it earlier, and I see it a lot with what we do, is I'll be told that somebody doesn't want to come speak at one of our events because they didn't do enough while they served to warrant what we're trying to accomplish, which is end suicide. So I would say, understand that every single story matters, right? Majority of my time in the military was spent on top of a submarine, tied up to a pier in Pearl Harbor, staring off into the middle distance with guns strapped on me and talking about, hey, do you think a velociraptor could get through this box that we're standing in? Like, that's the majority of our time, is just wasted time standing on top of this thing. When stuff got bad, when we had to go do these things that we were trained to do, and that I wouldn't wish my kids to have to do one day. Those are the stuff that changed us, for sure. But the majority of the time was spent just like every other human being on the planet, trying to figure out what to do next, or where are we going from here. And the purpose piece is a big part. I still don't know my purpose. I have an MBA. I don't know what to do with it. I got it, though. It happened a year ago, and it's sitting over there on my desk, but I don't know what to do with it. I just went to school because that was the next route to go down at 30, and then I can look at my kids and be like, go to school. Let's do this thing, you know? But I still don't know what my purpose is. I think I reignite it every day. Something new comes along, you know? Obviously, I'm putting a lot into this and into my job and this and that, but I would say a trait of the veteran is we never reach something that's good enough. We're always constantly moving forward and up, and where can we go from here, and how do I get this next thing? And I don't think that's a bad thing. I think that's a good trait to have, in my opinion. So that's my piece on it.
Well, first thing, Ryan, I was fortunate enough to take a trip to Israel and tour the Holy Land. And at one of the sites, your story of being behind, I assume it's probably like an anti-aircraft gun or something like that, reminded me of, there was a church. There's a bunch of like churches built around different sites throughout Jerusalem. And one that we were at, our tour guide just like casually mentioned some stuff carved into the floor. And he was like, oh yeah, this was just like some game, that it's like checkers or whatever, some game that the centuries would play when they were on guard. And I'm like, wait, so Joe's been like screwing around on guard duty for thousands of years. That is hilarious. But it just kind of demonstrates like how we all kind of share this common bond throughout time and will continue to do so. And I don't know, Matt can correct me here. I don't know. I feel like the purpose question is kind of loaded, because that seems to me that you've figured it out, and that you.
I don't know if I want to figure it out.
Yeah,
I don't, because I think that's what keeps pushing me forward, and that's what
it's the journey, not the destination, right? Like you find things along the way that you identify that you need to do. We're all pretty selfless people, and I think that's why we're seeking higher education and trying to give back and be a part of this. But ultimately, that's kind of like the theme, and I don't know, maybe that's the purpose, but it almost seems like an exercise in futility to try and nail down what your specific purpose is. And I know for me, like it becomes frustrating, and then I'm like, all right, whatever, I need to do econ. So I don't know.
One quick thing, I think Admiral McRaven's speech, I think it is to University of Texas, is great. It's just like every morning, make your bed, like make a purpose every day, because like Ryan and Zach said, you're never gonna be fulfilled. The credits don't end,
Yeah, I've got a quote on my wall here that says, "Before enlightenment, chop wood, carry water. After enlightenment, chop wood, carry water." And I think that's something for me. It's like you just said, wake up, make your bed, and that's enough.
Well, Terrell, I think you were going to have us jump in with maybe a little bit of Q&A. We're pretty on near running out of time. I actually personally want to thank the guys for doing this and sharing some of these stories. I've heard all of them, right? Decade in the military, and now a few past that, I've heard all of them. And to summarize just a few of the things that I heard without taking more than a few seconds, Ms. Walida is right. We all had chaplains embedded with us everywhere we served. I, as a mental health provider, did nothing that was command based in the military unless it was with a chaplain. And there's some wisdom in that old way of looking at things, right? Mental health and chaplains don't always get along, religion and science, all that kind of stuff. But I like what Eric said. Really, at the end of the day, it's about getting real and getting to be a person and getting yourself on the X where you need to be when somebody needs your help. And some days that's really all we can do. And everyone's right. The purpose question is loaded. I think the University of Chicago, especially with the veterans resources and interest that has been absolutely growing and evolving over the years, that's one of the places to look to find that purpose. So one of the things I've said to people when they ask me that question, part of my purpose is just to keep connecting with and finding other ways to help people that have had these problems, that have had these experiences, to try to find a way to just be on that X and see what can be done. All right. So Terrell, you got questions from the community, or is there's some other stuff we were gonna kind of try to hit that we're missing?
No, thanks, Matt, and thanks, panelists. I want to give the audience a couple of maybe 3 minutes. Anybody has any questions specific to the panelists, because we want to be respectful of everyone's time. So if you can plug them directly into the chat, you can definitely do that.
Oh, I will say, Terrell, like, and kind of speaking on that last point, essentially, I think it's a disservice when veterans say, it's not civilians' duty to know what I did. That's why I did it. And likewise, when civilians don't want to ask veterans because they're worried about, offending them, like, we gotta talk, right? We gotta humanize each other. We gotta make it one community instead of community divided. And I think OMAC does a really good job of bridging that gap here at UC Chicago, at least what I've found, right? Like last year, coming here, my first year, there was not much that I could find with the veteran stuff. Terrell was just getting everything going, and as before I got here, and as it got closer and closer to the start date, I really got involved with Terrell, and it's really helped bridge the gap between like the U Chicago community and the community surrounding with veterans, you know, because I didn't know how it was going to be perceived as a veteran coming to this school. You know, from the South Side of Chicago, I know this school, one, is fantastic educationally, and two, you know, has a lot of free thought, which I love. And I just wasn't sure. And I think it's great because at SSA, you know, through some of these talks, some students that particularly don't care for the military or veterans at all, talk to me as a person and a human, and know that that's just part of my intersectionality. It's not the whole story, right? And I think that is you know, that to me means a lot and speaks volumes.
John, let me follow up by that, by saying in terms of, and I know I'm going to Paul, but what I have observed, particularly through the work that Terrell is doing through OMAC, is that he creates this environment for veterans and non-veterans within the university community to communicate with one another and to really hear each other's stories and experiences. And I know as being a former faculty person in the classroom, oftentimes there are veterans in the classrooms that you don't know, and they may hit a wall and they disappear. And the professor never knows what's kind of going on, because I think that it really means that there needs to be a community created where it makes conversation comfortable enough for people to share their experiences and not be judged, regardless of what your political persuasion may be about the military and or war. And I think, Terrell, you should be credited for the community that you've created at University of Chicago. That doesn't happen at many institutions.
Thank you, Alita, and thank you, John. Again, I tell everybody, we stand as a community. This is not simply, you know, just the work that I'm doing in OMAC, but phenomenal partners across the city, across the state, across the country. As I mentioned earlier, John, I'm wearing my Rush's Road Home program shirt, thanks to my brother Will over at the Rush Road Home program. But what I want to do, because again, I want to be respectful of everyone's time. We are going to conclude right at 12:30, but I see that there are 2 questions in the chat. So again, I want to make sure that we give you enough meaningful response. We will still conclude at 12:30, so individuals who have to leave, you know, please do. But I'll let the teams who are available to stay behind to answer those questions. But I'll turn it back over to Alex so that she can go ahead and close us out.
Thank you so much, Terrell, and thank you everyone for joining us today. Thank you to our panelists and our moderator for sharing their extraordinary experiences and stories with us. Your insight into service-connected injuries will help the university shape more meaningful programming, resources, and support for our heroes. Thank you to OMAC for embodying inclusion and affording our heroes the opportunity to share with the community. And thank you to all participants for your support of the military-affiliated community. As a reminder, OMAC's Veteran Day Week programming continues tomorrow with the Veterans Day recognition with Brigadier General Dyer. Thursday's program covers LGBTQIA+ and the veteran identity, and Friday's program on the deportation of veterans with the Honorable Senator Tammy Duckworth. Friday afternoon, last but certainly not least, brings us retired Admiral McCraven speaking at the Institute of Politics here at University of Chicago, and we hope you join us for the additional programming.